Right, no preamble. You know who Spawn is. You know the toys are rad, or you wouldn't be here. Before we do get started though, we are going to need some rules. I know what you're thinking, and don't worry, I know a lot of this sounds like it's all going to be my opinion and it's all going to be very subjective, but I can assure you, this is absolutely 100% the most objective best Spawns figures list on YouTube. Exo Armor Spawn. This is the idea that Spawn is wearing a disguise, so he's wearing the skeleton of one of the Flebiacs, so that he can like schlep around hell and no one can tell that it's actually Spawn. So that alone is just already brilliant. Even without the armor, this is still a pretty decent Spawn figure. It's got a fair range of articulation. It looks like Spawn. It's not a bad figure at all. There is a variant of this that's in like salmon and lime green, which is just so awful. I love it. Next we have Mortal Kombat Spawn. One thing which I notice about McFarlane toys from this era is they prioritise scale and the sculpt over articulation. I feel like this is just Todd McFarlane's sense of humour all the way through. All of his toys were just slightly bigger than everyone else's toys. It doesn't really matter because this is actually a great figure. Another great thing about this figure is it's really cheap. If you wanted to get a Spawn figure and you just didn't know where to start, this is it. This is the most accessible Spawn figure there is. The first Mandarin Spawn came out in 1999 as part of Spawn Series 14, The Dark Ages. The toy line had already explored what would Spawn look like in a different historical setting, and so this one is, well, what would an ancient Chinese Spawn look like? The original toy is a beautiful thing, pushing the boundaries of what makes an action figure. Now this is a far more recent Mandarin Spawn, came out in the last few years. Both of them are equally bad at posing, but it still looks absolutely rad. Well, on our completely objective list of Spawn figures, it didn't take long before we got to a really weird one. 2003's Mutation Spawn from Series 23. Series 23 was all about mutations. It was all this big sort of what if episode, and this is what if Spawn goes completely dark side. The figure's got okay articulation, it's got some ball joints in the shoulders, it's got a few swivels here and there, but it has a great paint app. I really like the overbrushing that they've done here. It really helps to bring out a lot of the details in the sculpt. The figure doesn't come with any accessories, but it does come with real chain, and you're going to see this again on this list, because that's cool. There's a fair amount of people in the Spawn fandom who would call the 10th anniversary Spawn figure the best Spawn figure, but he's actually mad money, and that always puts me off buying an old toy. Like, it's still just an old toy. I managed to pick up this really sweet pewter variant, super cheap online, and this was handed out exclusively at the Nuremberg Toy Fair in 2003. So for 20 years, he's been in this bag. Poor guy. Breathe the free air, my friend. The range of poses you can do with this toy is just fantastic. The cross, the cape, the chains. This is why he is the boat. Like, this is a banger toy. And now we're into the top 10 Spawn figures of all time. Now this guy is the OG 1994 Series 1 Spawn. There's a lot of time that's passed between this figure coming out and now, and this is still one of the coolest figures out there as far as I'm concerned. There was more articulation and more sculpt detail in this toy than your standard 5 points of articulation figure that you'd have seen in Toys R Us at the time. And I love the chains, I love this cape, so iconic. Such a cool toy. And you know, he only just made the top 10, which is not a slight on the toy, not in any way. It's just a sign of just how much better the toys get from here on. Daniel Lonzo is the Spawn of the Future. This figure came out in Series 8 in 1997, and for 1997 this toy is incredible. You can see that McFarlane are starting to creep the scale of their figures up quite a lot so that they can start facilitating more sculpted detail, better paint jobs, that kind of thing. This is just before McFarlane started to prioritize the sculpt over everything else. I think this figure is such a fun little guy. I love the weird weapons and the little flappy bone wings on the back with the little flappy action. It's stuff like that. Like, that's, for me, that's a toy. And that's what this list is all about. Medieval Spawn is just that much cooler than regular Spawn. It was first created by Alan Moore in the comics, like right back in the very beginning, and the idea is that this is a hell spawn from the 1500s. This is actually probably the first idea of creating an alternate reality Spawn. I think Alan Moore actually came up with the idea of, oh, what if Spawn is just like this recurring title, this recurring character who comes back throughout history. It actually works even better than modern day Spawn being medieval. He's got more spikes, he's got wicked shoulder pads, the toy comes with more details, there's more accessories, he has this cool spinny shield. There's one version that even comes with a horsey. Every now and again you get a really weird interpretation of Spawn, and Nakey Jakey Solid Snakey Spawn is just something else, man. This is from Spawn Reborn, which is a series that ran in 2005, and it's reimagining things that already existed within the Spawn toy line. So this is actually a repaint of a figure called Viper King, which is from Spawn Series 14 in 1999. And he's a big snake. That's the thing. What if Spawn was a big snake that's actually made out of several smaller snakes? I can't even keep a straight face reading my own words. The snake limbs are bendy though, and oh, I love a bendy. He's also covered in chains. I mean, do I need to go on? What's not to like? This is like one of the most spawniest Spawn figures that they ever spawned. Coming in just outside the top 5, we have She Spawn. It took far too long for somebody to realise that Spawn could just as easily be a girl, but when they did, the toy they made is friggin' awesome. It has all these like weird gnarly clip-on armour pieces, which is just great. This big giant boot I love. She has this brilliant backpack thing that's like a rocket launcher shaped like a skull and a big kind of knife thing. I don't understand it, but I think it's great. She's really surprisingly poseable, and she has some really cool exclusive toyetic features like real brushable hair. I think this is great. Representation matters, and I think this is an example of McFarlane, not really cheapening the experience. He could have really gone for something very sexy, but actually what he did is he just made a really kick-ass Spawn figure. So yeah, top marks, Toddy. Samurai Spawn. This is from Series 19, which is called the Samurai Wars, and this was part of a big block of Spawn figures that were all Spawn in the Dark Ages. And this is a little kind of sub-line from that, which is all about reimagining the whole cast of Spawn in feudal Japan. It's so 2000s, I just love it. Just such a good toy. The unfortunate part is this is a really awkward era of Spawn figures. The plastic they made the toys out of, it doesn't age well. I bought mine actually mint on card, opened the packaging, and it was broken in the packaging. I don't think that was a fault of the seller. I imagine it was really well treated. It just broke. It's a real shame, because looking at this toy, right, this is peak sculpt, this is peak paint, this is even peak articulation. There's so much poseability in this toy. I really think that there's been no toy line that has done everything as well as this all at the same time, quite like early 2000s McFarlane. I'm just sad that my Samurai Spawn is broken in like 3 places, so the range of poses I can get him in is a bit limited, but I love him anyway, just the way he is. Number 4, Nuclear Spawn. is from Series 5 in 1996. McFarlane at this point, as I said, they'd explored a lot of different spawns. So they'd done a pilot spawn, they'd done a commando spawn, and then we started to see these alternate timeline spawns coming out. Nuclear Spawn is this like Mad Max / Fallout spawn, which is just, I think, perfect for the mid-1990s. I think this just is so cool. And who doesn't like a post-apocalyptic theme? That's just awesome. This figure has some great sculpting for the time. I love the Aquaman or Captain America style fish scale armor. There's just something about this whole design that I just love. I love the asymmetric design, the hamburger head, the bootlace holding his face together, the big tumble dry pipes going into his face. I don't know, like, it's just so weird. I love it. It's just the right level of dumb. Like, it really gives 90s Ninja Turtle vibes. And just what's not to love about that?
Final round.
Right, here it is, the top 3. You've been patiently waiting this entire time. Here we go. Number 3, Spawn 4 from Series 12 in 1998. I think this is the best vanilla spawn that there's ever been. Although, when you look at it, it looks like a commando spawn. It's got the bandana, it comes with a ton of guns, but according to the packaging and everything, this is just vanilla spawn. The previous spawns had all had some kind of gimmick going on with like wings or whatever, but this to me is just moving away from that and just taking everything to the next level. The articulation is pretty good, like it's not fantastic, but the sculpt and the paint, it just goes. It is bristling with all these details, all these kind of ammo bandoliers and grenades and stuff, and real chains. That's just so good. And of course he comes with a bunch of guns, which is brilliant. Also, it just gets so many points for being bang on 6-inch scale. I don't collect 6-inch toys, so it doesn't really matter to me in that respect. But what it does mean is I can use accessories from other toy lines. So like I bought these cool Fortnite guns, and look, it just looks great. Being that this is the most objective list of Spawn figures on YouTube, it can often be quite surprising to see the results. For instance, who would have thought that a clear green monster would make it all the way to second place? Alien Spawn 2 comes from Series 21 from 2002. This is called Alternate Realities. Series 21 was all spawns all the time. There was a she spawn, a raven spawn, a pirate spawn, and here we have alien spawn. And man, this figure just goes, man. As I've said before, the 2000s was just a highlight for me. This was McFarlane firing on all cylinders. They were doing the horror movie stuff, they were doing all the metal band stuff. It was just a brilliant time for toys. Just like Samurai Spawn, this is for me just the pinnacle of sculpting, of paint application and articulation. After this, the McFarlane toys really started pushing the sculpting, and so they really just became small statues, which is fine, it's just not for me. There are 2 variants of this figure. One was in amber, which is really cool, but one was in green, and that's just objectively cooler. Like, don't at me. This may or may not come as a surprise to you. Number 1, we have Necroplasm Spawn, aka Jelly Spawn. Necroplasm Spawn was a 1997 Collectors Club exclusive. Technically speaking, this should really rank below Series 1 Spawn, being that it is essentially the same figure sculpt, it just has less paint. But the vibes on this thing are through the roof. This is an all trans green repaint of Series 1 Spawn. They probably did this before the molds wore down for good. That's what I'm assuming here. He comes with a black cape and all black accessories, and this thing just rips, man. What a figure. What a figure. It's weird, isn't it? It's an incredible coincidence that the most objective list of Spawn figures on YouTube had 2 clear green figures so highly ranked. You can't argue with the results. You can't argue with the results. If you got all the way through this, thank you very much for watching. For the longest time, I think Spawn toys represented the high watermark of what an action figure really could be. It is these toys here that kicked open all the doors for companies like NECA or Four Horsemen or what have you. And this is my way of celebrating that. Hail to the Toddfather, and Malbolger bless us all this Spawntember. If you enjoyed this, check out some previous uploads. I actually have other videos about toys and stuff, so that should be pretty cool. And if you like weird, old, edgy, spooky stuff from the turn of the millennium, then that's pretty much what I do here on Stoked. So hit subscribe and hopefully I'll see you in a future upload. Until then, take it easy. Alright, ta-da.